All right, and in the lab previous, you've already been introduced to a couple of deciduous conifers. There's old cypress, taxodium, and larch, or tamarack, which has a scientific name, Larix. There's one species within the larch genus that grows here in the Pacific Northwest, and that is western larch. This is a branch from a western larch. You can tell by the color, this beautiful bright yellow, that it is fall. I was lucky to get this kind of late October. By mid-month, this won't have any needles on it anymore. The needles, though, not only are they obviously changing color, they're very soft to the touch. They don't have a thick, waxy texture to them, and they're clustered on spur shoots. So you can have 10, 20 needles all clustered together on, collected together on spur shoots, which I don't know what, maybe it's easier to see it from the underside. Mm-hmm. It's almost like little tufts of needles attached to these woody bumps that are on the twig. The twigs, it's part of the twig, so it's a spur shoot. It's a branch that didn't elongate. And actually, the needle arrangement here is still spiral. It's only because the spur shoot does not elongate. There's no space between the nodes, and so all the needles look like they're clustered together. But when there's a new shoot growing, which you can see here on the end here, it starts out with single needles in a spiral arrangement. It's only in the second year that the spur shoots start to develop. But then once they do, it's very noticeable, and when this drops its needles, it's going to have these very pronounced bumps along the twig, and that's where the needles are going to regrow. The cones are small. They're very similar to hemlock cones in that they have a cylindrical shape, sort of a papery texture. The margins of the scales are smooth, and in western larch, there's tiny whisker-like bracts that extend between the cone scales. That might be hard to see because they tend to break off pretty quickly, and you're just left with the cone. The cone itself tends to hang out on the tree even after the seeds are dispersed. So you can recognize larch even in the wintertime with the cones and the very noticeable woody spur shoots. Western larch is a beautiful, fairly large, tall tree with a very narrow crown. It drops its lower branches and develops a clear, straight, very straight bowl with sort of orangish to reddish colored, somewhat scaly bark. It's reminiscent to a ponderosa pine, but different. It is very fire resistant, however. It is one of the more fire resistant trees out there in the interior Northwest. Dropping its lower branches also helps protect it from fires that tend to be lower on the ground. It has very rot-resistant wood, and even when they fall, they tend to persist on the ground and don't break down for a very long time, which makes it useful for habitat for a variety of wildlife that need something at home that doesn't just disintegrate. But also that straight wood quality, nice and straight and tall, make it good for posts and pilings and utility lines, which we're going to need a lot of after this year. So, pretty cool tree. You'll hear people calling it tamarack. Tamarack is usually a common name applied to an eastern species of larch, but you'll hear it thrown around too, and it is referring to western larch. The full scientific name for western larch is Larix occidentalis. So similar to the juniper, western juniper, Juniperus occidentalis, Larix occidentalis, it just means western. So the specific epithet.
Good.